Hello, awesome people. I hope your day is going as well as you are. Today we're taking a look at Andre Norton's The Beastmaster that was published in 1959. Now, Andre Norton is a hugely influential person in the speculative fiction genres of science fiction fantasy, she started publishing in 1934. She was writing until she died in 2006. I've always wanted to read some stuff by Andre Norton, but I never had a chance to. So I wanted to do somewhat of a deep dive into her. The Beastmaster was on my bucket list. My dad had a copy of it. I knocked it out in 3 days. It's 185 pages long. I did about 60 pages a day, and knocked it out. And then next up will be the sequel to The Beastmaster. This somewhat influenced the movie, but not really. The movie has some basic, and I mean basic notes from this science fiction novel, and it's a lot of fun. This is the first time I've done Andre Norton, and she was a big figure in science fiction and fantasy. For example, she was the first female in the Science Fiction Writers Hall of Fame. Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Hall of Fame. She has like dozens of universes that she wrote. In 1976, she was invited to do some gaming with Gary Gygax for the Dungeons & Dragons game, with his Greyhawk game in order to experiment. She loved it, thought that the Greyhawk world was great, and a couple of years later she published a novel that was partially set in the Greyhawk world, which I've ordered, and I'm going to be reading it here soon. And that book is the first. I did some research. It's the first book that was written in an RPG. I was trying to find out it was the first book written in any game genre, like board games or tabletop RPGs or stuff like that. And I couldn't find out if it was or if it wasn't. So I'll leave that up to you in case you're better searchers of Google and that sort of a thing. But I definitely felt but it certainly is. This is the first book that was published in a tabletop RPG in 79, which is pretty cool. So that was also a first, and it may have been a first for all games. A novel set in that world that game created. So there you are. That's also something pretty cool. And that connects her to the things. She's also mentioned in Gary Gygax's Appendix N that he put out in his 1979, in his first edition Dungeons & Masters Guide, for a first edition to AD&D. He listed in Appendix N a list of influences on the game that heavily influenced the game, and also places that you can go to for if you're interested in checking out some ideas for your gaming, and places that you can go to for inspiration. So it's kind of a reference list as well as an inspiration list for you as a dungeon master. And she's listed there too. So it's also important for you to, and I wanted to read every writer in the appendix in, at least a few things by them. And again, this is something that she was a key influence in. So she's mentioned there too. So for that's another reason why I wanted to knock out some of her stuff. And I started again with The Beastmaster, the 1959 novel. This 1959 novel stars a Native American Navajo military special services person, and that was very new and very avant-garde for the time to have, in 1959 to star a Native American. And that Native Americanness isn't just like she just checked it off the box and then moved on. She actually did some research on it, and the culture and the Native Americanness is a key part of the identity and the world building that happens on this planet that this is set on. So that's pretty cool. Also, this is a good counterexample of race and not just somebody who's playing into a Native American archetype and so forth, but this is a nice character counterexample. That's a key one for the era, for example, and I like to point out counterexamples when I come across them against these sorts of things. For example, when I did some research on a video I did called Women in the Pulp Era, there were two main archetypes for women in the Pulp Era. The first main archetype are the virgins that you like and need to be defended and protected and rescued from things, and then the sexually available women who are bad and negative, and you need to stay away from those people. And these are sort of the two archetypes. And then in the Conan novella Red Nails, Robert E. Howard has a character named Valeria, who's a female who's just as powerful as Conan. She has, songs written about her just like Conan does, and she's sexually available. And she's definitely, a different archetype. She's not one of the two. She's not somebody you should stay away from because, they're a bad person and a bad influence. It's not the Madonna or the whore, right? She's a third type of character. So when I talk about these trends, I also like to talk about counterexamples, and this is a good counterexample of Native Americans not being used in a trope sort of a way. Now this novel, it's basically has the main character's name Storm, and he's arriving to this far-flung colony planet after Terra, Earth, is destroyed in this war that just ended, and he's on a vengeance quest. But he's going to set aside the vengeance quest until the final chapter of the novel in order to help out the locals with a number of different things that are happening. When he arrives, there are some tropes that take them place from the Westerns. For example, on the planet, the natives and the pioneer colonists have some cowboy Native American sort of commonalities to them and to their relationships. They also have the people that are ranchers. The major thing that they sell are meats and wool and skins that are made from these sheep-like creatures that are bred there on that planet. Horses are also bred too, that were taken over by local colonists about 100 years ago. And so this is a brand new colony, and it definitely has some Western feeling aspects to it. So there are some space Westerns to it too. And if you wanted to give this a space Western genre, I would not be disappointed in that or disagree with that if you felt that this was more of a space Western than just a pure, just epic space short story. It's awesome. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10 overall. The writing is great. The world building is great. You don't spend too much time with world building. There's a lot of plot that happens in less than 200 pages in just 3 days of reading, about 2 hours a day. So about 6 hours total for me to knock out this novel. Last night for the first time. The writing was fine. It was definitely good. Andre, you can tell by now, has developed. Remember, her first novel she published in 34. Well, this is 59. It's 25 years into her writing, right? So this is definitely something good. I also like going back and rereading a lot of these older novels because they don't take that much time because they're like, 200, 225 pages, right? 150 pages for some that are key influential novels. And my next one's going to be, another novel that's in this collection that I read for you. I picked up this collection on Amazon just a couple of months ago because I wanted to knock it out. I'll link you to it below. It has both it and the sequel in it. It's called Beastmaster's Planet by Andre Norton, in case you want to knock out both books. She does come back to these books later on with some co-writers. Although, according to the co-writers, she really kind of more gave the plots and general ideas in an outline, and then they wrote it and fleshed it out. So there are 3 more novels in this series after these first 2, but the first 2. The second novel was written in 1962, just a couple of years later, when she was definitely still kind of feeling it and that sort of a thing. She's nicknamed the Grand Dame, Great Dame of Science Fiction and Fantasy, which is pretty cool. She did change her name legally, because during the time, fantasy and science fiction fans were mainly males. So in the early days, in order to make sure that she got sales and was able to sell her stuff, she changed her name legally to Andre Norton from Alice Norton. And many reviewers have regularly, if you go back and read them, when doing some research on this book and the reviews of it at the time that were contemporary in 59, there's a lot of reviewers that call her a man, and they use he pronouns and so forth. So it's kind of funny because she's definitely a female. She's been nominated for Hugo's twice, which is pretty cool. She's the Hugo nominated and in the Hall of Fame. So she's definitely somebody who was appreciated by the masses too. She's a big name in the genre, and we'll be doing a deeper dive into Andre Norton moving forward. So there you are. Have you read The Beastmaster? What'd you think of it? Did you agree or disagree with my 8 out of 10? Did you think it's higher? Did you think it's not as high? If so, I would be more than happy to engage you with it further in the comments below, whatever your take is. If you like this video, hey, why not hit that subscribe button? Because there's going to be a lot more of these to follow. And then finally, I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and investing it and watching my video. We all have so many things that are happening in our lives, and we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it. So thanks again, and have an amazing day.